There's a saying that most people will know. It goes along the lines of lies, damn lies and statistics. The economy grew by 25% under Labor. When that member talks about John Key increasing wage growth, I can tell that member that the 9 years before Labor came in, the national government increased the minimum wage by $1. By $1 over 9 years. Labor took the minimum wage from $7.50 to $12.75.
Order. This is a second reading bill. I refer the member to Speaker's Rulings 105, 105.5 and 106.1 and 2. While you can mention... Order. While one can mention what the opposition has said in terms of the debate, one cannot dwell on that at length. Stuart Nash.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when we look at New Zealand wages in comparison to Hong Kong wages, we are in fact quite a low wage economy. Now, the reason why we are compared to Hong Kong and our other Asian neighbours, Mr. Speaker, is because the national government only increased the minimum wage by $1 over 9 years. Now, if they were living in Hong Kong, there would have been a revolt, even in a country like Hong Kong. And there was, Mr. Speaker. They elected a Labor government who took the minimum wage from $7.50 to $12.75. And when they talk about Mr. Key and his active agenda in terms of going to Hong Kong, well, I'll tell you what, Mr. Speaker, he has only increased the minimum wage by 50 cents. If you're earning $1 million a year, and there are about 350 people earning $1 million a year, you're about to get $1,000 a week. If you're on the median wage in Hawke's Bay, you're going to get about $3. That is a travesty. But, Mr. Speaker, what I would like to say is I do stand in support of this Tariff, New Zealand, Hong Kong, China Closer Economic Partnership Agreement. That's Amendment Bill, I should say, because bilateral trade agreements are vital to the country's sustained economic development and growth. And, Mr. Speaker, that last member knows, he was involved in the trade game for a long time, he knows that every single FTA and CEP that has come before this House was negotiated by either Phil Goff or Jim Sutton. Labor started every single negotiation that has come through this House that we are passing into law. Mr. Grosser has taken the ball and dotted it down. He has received the final pass and crossed the try line. Like that great Hawke's Bay player Israel Dagg did in the test, great magpie man that he did against the Springboks. That is all Mr. Grosser has done. Phil Goff and the Labor government was the team that actually took the ball and ran with it. Now, Mr. Speaker, I would like to outline just 2 points. Just 2 points. The first is the necessity of negotiating sound free trade agreements. The second is that this national government is simply not doing enough to ensure that New Zealand companies can take advantage of these new opportunities like the one we are passing into legislation tonight. Mr. Speaker, closer economic partnerships, or CEPs as they're known, are a vital part of New Zealand's economic development policy. CEPs break down tariff, quota, customs duties which restrict access and profitability of New Zealand exporters and importers. They will hopefully lead to increased imports and exports and potential added wealth to both countries. New Zealand signed the CEP on Hong Kong on the 29th of March 2011, and this bill implements this agreement. Hong Kong, Mr. Speaker, is currently our 9th largest export destination, accounting for $823 million last year. New Zealand imported that's in exports. New Zealand imported $199 million of merchandise goods from Hong Kong last year, making it the 31st largest source of imported goods. However, let's put this into perspective. Hong Kong accounts for only 1.9% of New Zealand's total exported goods and only 0.04% of our total imported goods. Herein lies the challenge to this economy going forward. Our 9th largest export destination accounts for only 1.9% of New Zealand's total exported goods. If there is ever a case for global diversification, then these figures are it. There is a very strong argument for this type of free trade agreement. It puts potential trading partners on the map and on the radar of New Zealand trade and enterprise as well as potential exporters. Despite Hong Kong's small size, Mr Speaker, it is a market that is already rapidly expanding, with last year's total exports increasing by 33.6% compared with 2008. However, total imports declined by 2.5% compared with 2008. The largest area of export growth by percentage is actually apples, the value of which increased by 122%, which is good for the people of Hawke's Bay, considering this is the fruit bowl of New Zealand. Believe it or not, product registering the second highest percentage growth is actually offal. It was up by 66% over that 2-year period. However, by far the product of largest value, by almost 4 times the next one, is crustaceans. The value in 2009 is around 200 million New Zealand dollars FOB. To put this into context, sheep meat exports were worth around 42 million. In terms of imports, the largest area of imports is machinery parts, which account for about $16 million, but this dropped by about 15%. I do note the CEP does not provide Hong Kong investors with an exemption from New Zealand's investment screening regime as set out in the Overseas Investment Act 2005. The Act requires overseas investors to apply to the Overseas Investment Office for consent to invest in New Zealand, fishing quota, sensitive land or business assets over $100 million. The screening threshold for Hong Kong, however, is $20 million, which is well below the threshold of $100 million applicable to other overseas investors. Now, New Zealand service exporters, as mentioned by my colleague, the Honourable Marianne Street, also have secured strong future-proofing of their position in the Hong Kong market through the most favoured nation treatment and a ratchet clause. Mr Speaker, the most favoured nation treatment means that New Zealand exporters will automatically benefit from any preferential treatment that Hong Kong provides to future FTA partners, subject to certain reservations and exceptions, and the ratchet clause means that any future unilateral liberalisation undertaken by Hong Kong in certain sectors will be bound in and committed to New Zealand. But, Mr Speaker, the second point I would like to point out is the fact that this government is simply not doing enough to ensure that New Zealand companies can take advantage of any new opportunities generated by this and other free trade agreements and closer economic partnerships. Prime Minister Key came away from China and said that he wanted trade double to that country in 4 years' time. Well, the vast majority of us actually want the same. Increased sustainable trade is a necessity for New Zealand's economic future growth and development. But the difference between National's approach to trade and Labour's approach to trade is quite stark. Under Trade Ministers Honourable Phil Goff and Honourable Jim Sutton, Labour increased the budget for market development and access opportunities by millions, in the knowledge that operating in a foreign environment like China requires very specific skills, knowledge and support. Imagine, Mr Speaker, going into a country like Hong Kong where the language, the customs, the laws, the business practice, etc. are completely different. Then take into account, Mr Speaker, that 97% of New Zealand's businesses are small to medium enterprises. This means that 97% of New Zealand businesses employ 19 people or less. They simply do not have the skills, competencies or resources to employ a full-time international marketing or market development manager. Labour recognised this and built a support network around key markets to help businesses optimise their opportunities. National, under Tim Grosser and Jerry Brownlee, have instead cut the budget. And when questioned about this, Mr Grosser said, "Our plan is to do more with less." That's not even a decent slogan, more with less, let alone a goal, let alone a plan, and certainly not a strategy. This is why I say, Mr Speaker, that this government is not doing enough to help the country and its companies take advantage of the type of free trade agreement. Mr Speaker, in conclusion, I would like to say that I do support this bill. It is another step, well, it's a Labour bill, of course, it was negotiated by Phil Goff. It's another important step in the process of growing opportunities for New Zealand companies. However, However, as I said, that government over there, Mr Speaker, is simply not doing enough to allow New Zealand companies, New Zealand businessmen and women to take advantage of this. You cannot do anything by more with less strategy. This government needs to engage more with the business community in terms of allowing these companies to take advantage